What's up, everybody? It's Jamel Gibbs, your family-oriented entrepreneur. Welcome to another podcast episode. This is the Business and Investing Podcast, where you learn all things business and investing related. I'm excited today because we got somebody who started the real estate business during the pandemic, literally a little over 2 years ago, and he's killing it right now in Atlanta, doing this thing. I've been seeing his reels up on Instagram and providing some really good information. So I reached out to him literally a couple of days ago, and I said, I got to have you on the podcast, and he agreed to come on. So I appreciate you jumping on, Ty. And really, I want to talk to the new real estate investor, people who've been dragging their feet for a little while and just not taking action, right? I want to show you what's possible on this podcast. Here's somebody who literally started during the pandemic. You know, he was just telling me right before we hopped on the line that, you know, he was watching me on Clubhouse 2 years ago. And, me and a friend of mine named Brandon Barnes, shout out to Brandon. A lot of you guys might know who he is. But here's somebody who is now creating his own community, doing his own thing, and he's a full-time real estate investor. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. I want him to tell you guys a little bit about himself. But I just want you guys to be in a mindset that anything is possible if you take action. Nothing is ever going to happen if you don't, right? And here's living proof of it. Taquan Franklin, what's up, my man?
What's up, Jay, man? Appreciate you having me on, man. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. And I'm just here to tell my story from my perspective and give some value to get some light some fires under people so they can kind of do the same thing that I did and take it beyond.
Absolutely, man. And before we even jump into all of that, man, how can our listeners reach out to you on Instagram or through your community? I know you mentioned you got a Discord community and things like that. And we'll mention it again later, but for now, how can they reach out to you if they wanted to?
Yeah, so I'm very, very active on Instagram, as you know. If you just follow me at Ty the Investor, that's TyTheinvestor on Instagram, shoot me a DM. That's the best way to connect with me. Be on the lookout for the fake scammers out there because there's plenty of them now coming out of the woodwork. So make sure you get the right one.
Bro, let me tell you, man, I've been having, I probably have at least 10 people who try to copy my brand, my name on Instagram every week. And what they do is they ban me. They prevent me from seeing a page, so I can't report them. But I get people contacted. So watch out for them scammers. You know, don't send nobody no Bitcoin. Don't send nobody no money.
Nah,
I'm
no
not on
Forex,
Instagram. I'm not on social media doing that, right? So, but tell them
we're not asking for money.
That's right. That's right, man. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, man?
Yeah, so my background, I started, I come from a background of sales. I started working as my career was I was a logistics freight broker. So essentially I played the middleman between companies, $1 million companies and truck drivers. So I was connecting the two, moving their shipments. Did that for about 7 years. During my last year of doing that, like when the pandemic hit, some of the things started changing as far as like my customers started shutting down. They started slowing down. So my income, I was a six-figure earner there, but everything started to drop. And I started kind of losing interest in that, the whole commuting to work and going to work and sitting at a desk all day, every day, and not being able to move around as freely as I wanted to do. So that's when I started dabbling into real estate, essentially. My first taste of real estate was I purchased a townhouse, and then I ended up selling it like a year and a half later, and I ended up getting a pretty decent amount of profit. And I'm like, okay, the money is here, and it wasn't that hard to do. So then, obviously, you hear all the stigmas, or you need to have good credit, you need to have a lot of money in the bank, you need to have this and have that. And social media is starting to blow up a little bit. So I started searching and Googling. Google, is the way to go if you're trying to learn something. Google and YouTube. So I Googled, how to get into or how to purchase real estate with no license, no credit, or a lot of money. Those are like the key things that I was looking for. My credit wasn't that great. I didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't have a license and wasn't looking to get a license. So a few Google searches, I started coming across wholesaling. That's essentially the first thing that came up to me. And I started doing my research on it, going down a rabbit hole on YouTube, looking at these videos and started understanding and seeing what the process and what the concept was. And once I identified that the process and the concept was a similar thing to what I was doing in my career, I was like, oh, I can do that. It's just a different industry and a different product, right? I'm just the middleman. I'm just connecting the two dots. With real wholesale real estate, you just connecting the seller to a buyer slash
Right.
investor, right? And I'm making a profit in between. So that's what really gave me the confidence to go ahead and say, okay, let me try this. So, like I said, during my last year, I started losing the motivation to be working in the career. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, all these different things, and I started doing it part time. So I would go to work from 8 to 5. I would come home from and start cold calling homeowners from 6:30 to like 7:30, 8 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. On Saturdays, I would cold call for like 4 or 5 hours as well. And I was just committed to that, you know.
So you were cold calling at first. So I'm
hmm
assuming you got the list, you skip traced it, then you started cold calling. How many hours a day were you doing that for?
While I was working, I was doing it probably maybe an hour a day, and then, like I said, on Saturdays, that's when I had the most time available to me
Hmm.
because I didn't work on Saturdays, so I would commit it 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours
Got it.
cold calling because I had more time to do it. So I was doing that consistently for months until
So
I
if
got
we
my first opportunity.
so if we're looking, realistically, 5 days a week. Let's say you work 5 days a week. That's 5 hours of cold calling plus another 4 or 5 on the weekend, right?
hmm
So you're talking 10 hours a week. How long did it take for you to get your first deal?
It took me about 6 months to get my first one, to close the
Six
first one.
months. Now, I love this part of the story because a lot of people come in. What's and be honest. Let's talk to people who are brand new. They hear a lot of the stigmas out there. You get paid in 30 days. Definitely possible. I don't preach getting paid in 30 days,
No.
even though it's definitely possible. But let's be real. 99% of the people out here are not going to get paid in 30 days. The reason why that's the case is because people have different skill sets, right? People's abilities are different. So your abilities, you already knew how to dispatch trucks, right? Logistics.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I'm gonna start calling you the dispatch investor. but uh, but you already had a certain skill set and you understood how to operate the business. Some people don't, and it may take them longer. 6 months is a significant amount of time. It took me 13 months to get my first deal, and I was a hustler, man. And this is back when competition wasn't, it wasn't nearly as the business wasn't nearly as competitive as it is today. We're talking 2002. I'm talking about like almost nobody was investing in real estate that I knew of, with the exception of a handful of people. And it took me 13 months. It was because I didn't have somebody showing me how to do it. YouTube wasn't here. Google wasn't here. I had to figure it out and make mistakes as I went on. But it took you 6 months. What do you feel? How long do you feel it will take the average person to complete their first deal, putting in, let's say, 10, 12 hours a week? How long do you think that will realistically take?
Like it's a lot of different moving parts
Mm-hmm.
that goes along with it. I think ultimately it's about intent and commitment and being consistent. Because that's the key right there, right? So like if you're consistently doing it, if you're doing 10 hours a week, 1 week, and then the next week you fall off, you don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
and you do it again, you got to be consistent with doing it and actually learning throughout the process. Through that 6 month period, I had 3 properties on the contract that didn't go through,
Mm.
and they all didn't go through for different reasons. And I learned what reasons why they didn't go through, whether my numbers weren't right, whether I was in the wrong area, whether I was talking to the wrong person to begin with, right? Got that person under contract and it wasn't even their property. So during that process, I learned a lot. So I was putting myself out there and getting active and talking to people and learning the process and learning from my mistakes. And I was consistently doing that. So I feel like you can possibly, for the average person, if you stay committed and you put in the time, energy, and effort and be intentional about getting it done, and that's like front of mind, you can get it done in about 6 months.
Yeah.
Because you have to think about it. It's going to take probably 30 days to close the deal, but you have to think about and be considerate of the time before it gets to close, right? You
Yep.
have to think about your lead generation, bringing in the person, to bringing in the people that's going to give you those opportunities. Then you have to start building and nurturing those relationships with those homeowners. That may take 1, 2, 3 months, right? and then the whole closing process might take some time as well. So a lot of those factors kind of tie in, and I agree with you 100%. You're not going to close a deal jumping in this thing day one, and then by day 30 you're going to close a deal. The chance of that happening is slim to none.
Slim to
You
none.
have to really put in the time and effort and be consistent. But if you do, like you said, if you be consistent and do it over a course of time consistently, then it's going to happen for sure.
Somebody said something to me not so long ago. They said I could tell how successful somebody's going to be by how far out they think. Meaning, if you have somebody that's thinking right now, like I'm going to get $1 million over the next 12 months versus I'm going to build a business over the next 10 years, the person who's thinking in a 12-month spurt is probably not going to be successful versus a person that understands it's going to take time for me to build this up and build it right and be very successful in 10 years. That person is probably going to make it, right? So the chances of somebody getting paid in 30 days is slim to none. But if you understand that it takes time to build this thing up, you don't want to stop 3 feet from gold. That's what I'm saying, right? You want to push. You want to keep going. If it didn't work, keep pushing even further because you don't know when that first one is going to come. And when it does, it'll change your life, right? So think long term in this business. Don't think short term.
I agree 1,000% because, like you're saying, like a lot of this, it's a lot of eye candy out there, right? And that's what they use to bring people in. But you have to understand, and I tell people in my community, I say, listen, you have to embrace that process, embrace
Mm-hmm.
that journey, stay in your lane, and focus on what you're doing.
Right.
Don't worry about so and so who closed their deal or so
Mm.
and so who closed their deal. You need to focus on you, and then you start working, and then things gonna come to you. Don't worry about it. Don't put a timeline on it. Just do
That's
the
right.
work, and then things are gonna come to you. As long as you don't quit, you're gonna be guaranteed to win. Period.
That's right, man. The only person who loses is the quitter.
one hundred
You know what I
percent.
mean? And the person who stays in the game in the longest wins, man. You stay in the game the longest, you win. I learned that down on Wall Street, man, when I was 19 years old. That's something that stayed with me for my entire career. So obviously, it was a fairly easy transition into the business for you because you understood the concept of dispatching logistics. So now you said, okay, I could take the same concept and do the same thing in real estate. What type of hurdles did you face before you got your first deal in order to be able to get that first one closed?
Well, just like with anybody else, it was the consistency, right? So, like
Mm-hmm.
initially, when you get started, you start learning, you start doing it, and then something happens where you just stop for a day or two, or stop for 3 days, or whatever. Or you go look at some properties, or you make some offers. The seller doesn't accept the offer,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not motivated anymore, right? So all of those things happen, but I just kept going, right? I just kept moving. Another thing was I was not invested in some software. I know back in the day they ain't have the software they have now when you was doing it, but I realized like just utilizing software to make me more efficient with the time that I had was very important.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed that because it allowed me to talk to more people in a shorter period of time, and it allowed me to have the tools that I needed to be able to perform and be efficient and start doing what I needed to do the right way. So, for the first 3 months, I didn't have any tools. I was just using my cell phone, hand dialing, whatever, and that took forever. And
Mm-hmm.
then I started getting into some of the tools and the softwares, and that helped me out tremendously. So those are kind of like the two main hurdles that I really dealt with.
Got it. Do you feel like people quit too early?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So, let's talk about that for a moment, right? I know we kind of dug into, you know, the longevity of the business, but what type of mindset shift does it take for somebody to really succeed? You've been doing it for a couple of years. You kind of understand starting from scratch what it takes to really succeed and push. It's that consistency and things like that. But what type of mindset did you have in order to really push through?
It's just like one of those mindsets, like whatever your goal is or whatever your end goal is, what's your why, what's your reasoning, that's what's
Mm,
going to drive you every single time, right? So anytime that I step in my office or any day that I wake up and get busy or try to get or want to get busy, I always think of the end goal first, right? Like,
mm,
why am I doing this? What's my reason? What's my purpose, right? So that's what really drives me to go. So that's your mindset. Always keep that up front, and then understand that you can do it, right?
mm-hmm.
Especially I'm not, making fun of anybody, but I seen certain people close deals and I'm like, okay, well, he looks just like me or she looks just like me, or, we have the same resources or whatever. Why can't I do it either? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So it's one of those things, like if he can do it, she can do it, I can do it as well. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
ultimately is you versus you every single day, is whether you want to make the decisions, is whether you want to do it or not. Once you get to a certain age and point, the battle is versus yourself. You know what I'm saying? So are you going to look in the mirror and be like, okay, Ty, am I doing what I'm supposed to do to get the next deal? Or am I
That's
doing
right.
what I'm supposed to do to succeed? Right. So every single day, that's my mentality. Even to this day, is like, what's the end goal? Like, am I battling myself and am I letting my better self take over? Or am I letting my lesser self take over? And I always want to strive for the better self to take over every single day.
That's right, man. Back in the days, I was Mr. New York City, right? I never really told a lot of people this, but I was Mr. New York City. I have pictures and all kinds of trophies and swords. Mr. Natural New York City. I was Mr. Natural Mania. And back then, my mindset was, I'm going to do this no matter what. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, right? And it was just the consistency over time, which led to the end result of me, getting in the best shape of my life in 6 months, and then being able to bring home the trophy, right? Same thing in business, right? It's the consistency over time, but it's the reason, it's the purpose, like you said, the reason why. I tell people on my channel all the time, I said, if your reason why involves you, then you need to find a big enough reason why, a bigger reason why than you, because you can let yourself down, but you can't let other people down. When you put other people on your back, that's when the game changes for you, because now you're willing to push 10 times harder to be able to make things happen. So obstacles, man. Obviously, there's some obstacles that a brand new investor is going to face. And we talked about some of those obstacles. What are some other obstacles that you might have faced over the last couple of years to really build up your business?
Yeah, so like one thing that a lot of people, it's going to happen regardless. You may get a property, make an offer, and your numbers may not be right all the time. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? And there's going to be that conversation that needs to be had with that homeowner. Hey, and people are afraid to have that tough conversation, that either you have to renegotiate that price to a lower price for it in order for it to work, or
Yep.
you just tell the seller, hey, my bad, we messed up on this one. This is where we need to be in price. I can completely understand if you don't want to move forward with that, but I just wanted to be upfront and transparent with you,
Mm-hmm.
and let them make a decision whether or not they want to work with you at that lower price, or they just want to terminate the agreement and move forward. So that's going to happen often. That still happens to us nowadays, right? Because sometimes the numbers may look good and it may not be a home run, but sometimes it's worth a shot. You know what I mean? Not saying lock up every property that you see at high enough numbers. Obviously, do your analysis, but there's going to be certain situations in which you have to have those hard conversations with homeowners and try to renegotiate a price.
That's right. A lot of times too, we have to remember that we're in a shifting market. So you might sign a contract, and then 2 weeks later, the market shifted a little bit. Your numbers don't make sense anymore, right? So you got to be willing to renegotiate that contract. And if your seller is motivated enough, they're willing to work with you. Oftentimes you're going to see that, they don't want to go out and have to find another buyer. They're going to be willing to work something out with you in order to be able to make the deal happen. So if you find the right sellers, which is the key to this whole thing, the rest of it will pan itself out. You know what I mean? So with that in mind, man, why don't we provide our listeners with, let's say, a 3 to 5 step process to get started? What exactly did you do in order to go from where you were to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I've done pretty much everything that I started seeing on YouTube, right? You start going on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, you see, oh, do bandit signs or do this, drive for dollars, all these different things, right? So I always recommend, like, I'm always going to be for efficiency over anything
Mm-hmm.
else,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to be efficient. If you're doing business, you plan on scaling this to a business and making it a legitimate business. Anybody in business understands that efficiency is important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your time matters. The money spent and the time you save or the time you use is very important. So I think the first step, and I always recommend this, is to pull a list from somewhere. Pull a list of homeowners. obviously they're not going to be motivated unless you talk to them and understand what their situation is. But get a list of homeowners, get their phone numbers and addresses. Whether you can drive for dollars if that's all you got at the time, right? If you don't have the money to purchase a list and skip trace it that way, you can drive for dollars. Drive for dollars, essentially, you're driving around in your neighborhood looking for distressed properties, overcut grass, busted windows, tarps on roofs, things like that. Properties that look like they are in disrepair and need some work. Jot those addresses down, and then get their phone numbers. So any way you can get a list of homeowners, grab those lists. Once you grab those lists of homeowners, you want to get access to their contact information, right? So there's free websites that you can get their contact information from. It's truepeoplesearch.com, fastpeoplesearch.com, whitepages.com. There's other websites as well. That's called skip tracing. There's other websites that you can pay to get those phone numbers faster, right? There's a whole bunch of them. I don't know if you got some that you want to throw out, Jamel, but
Yeah, you could go to NetR Online, but really, to me, I use a combination of netonline.com as well as fastpeoplesearch.com. I've skip traced a lot, and a lot of the information that we find on fastpeoplesearch.com is the information that's being paid for anyway. But I work in mass, so I'm just going to pay to get it skip traced. But for somebody that's not working on the same numbers that I'm working with, you could do this stuff yourself. The whole point is to have meaningful conversations. Like you said, driving for dollars. How many conversations, if you had 50 to 100 conversations, meaningful conversations that can lead to an offer with the seller, chances are you're going to close a couple of deals out of that. You know what I mean? 100%. You just got to be willing to get out there and talk to the people. A lot of people are not willing to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So once you get their phone numbers, like he's saying, have those conversations with people, asking about the condition of the property, asking about why they want to sell the property, right? Ask them about them, how soon they're looking to sell the property, things along those lines, right? Have those conversations, build some rapport with that homeowner so they can know, like, and trust you, right? And be willing to work with you. Once you have those conversations, right, then you make your offer. This game it's a volume game, right? So if you talk to 10 homeowners, and you have to make offers, man. If you're not making offers, it's not gonna happen. And even out of those 10 offers that you make, you might only get one accepted, but that one can be the deal that'll change your life. And I'm not gonna say it could be, because it is gonna be the deal that changed your life. That's because right. My first deal, it was only for $3,000, but that deal changed my life because it catapulted me to now. My first year, I did $150,000 in revenue, and then my second year, I'm doing $450,000. So, like, that one deal can change the game, but it's all ultimately up to you having those meaningful conversations. And when you have those meaningful conversations with people who are willing to sell their property or motivated, you must make the offer. And the more offers you're making, the better your chances are of getting properties under contract, which is going to get those deals to close for what you see on social media, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000, and so on.
My first deal was $1,500, man, and then I made $48,000 after that. So if I would have gave up, though, I would have never saw the $48,000 check. That changed my life, man. I was 21 years old.
Right.
So the whole key, what Ty is saying, if you're listening to him, is the consistency and just be willing to put in the work. If you're willing to put in the work, the benefits are going to come. You just got to be willing to stick it out. So like you said, man, $600,000 in 2 years is nothing to scoff at. Number one, that's $300,000 a year on average, where before you were making six figures, but I'm sure you probably, are doing better than that to be able to leave your job at this point, right? Now, 600,000 is gonna, 150,000, then 450, then it's gonna continue to grow every single year. The longer you're doing this, you'll be making millions of dollars in just a couple of years. So the question is, was it worth it? Absolutely. How many people here would make? How many phone calls do you feel like you've made over the last 2 years to lead to this type of income, Ty?
Countless.
Yeah.
Countless.
Thousands, right?
Countless. Yeah.
The whole thing
easily.
Is, if I told everybody on the line, look, if you made 5,000 phone calls over the next 2 years and had 5,000 meaningful conversations over the next 2 years, would you do it if you knew you were going to make $500,000?
You better.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. That's kind of the way you have to think about this. You can't, most people think, like we said, too short term. They're thinking about right now rather than how can I build this thing out? What does 5 and 10 years look like for me? You know what I mean? So don't think about the right now. Don't think about the phone call that you're on. Think about, okay, this is one phone call. Let me get another one, and then another one, and then another one. I'm sounding like DJ Khaled, but you understand what I'm saying. You know what I mean? But Todd just laid out the groundwork for you. Get the leads. You could, if you don't have money, drive for dollars. If you have a little bit of money, buy a list. Start with absentee owners. I just made it easy for you. Skip trace the list. If you drive for dollars, skip trace the driving for dollars leads. If you buy the list, skip trace the list. Then it's up to you to contact the people. You don't have money for direct mail. You don't have money to send out text blasts and all that. Pick up the phone and call people, right? But this is 90% of the work. 90% of it is getting the leads and contacting the people and screening them. If you could continually do this, the rest of it is going to fall right into place. That's where, you start exiting the deal, wholesaling. You can rehab. You could, I know you do a little bit of that too, Ty. Rent the properties, etc. Whatever you decide to do, right? But none of this is ever going to happen on the back end if you don't have your front end set up. If you're not driving the leads, if you're not skip tracing, if you're not contacting the people. That's really your step-by-step process right there.
Yeah, and that's what I tell everybody. Everybody that reaches out to me, shoots me a message on Instagram, whatever, I need help finding a deal. I always tell them focus on marketing to these homeowners and having those conversations and get the property under contract. Worry about the buyers later. Worry about all that other stuff, the title company and all that stuff later.
Yep.
The goal is getting properties under contract. So
Yep.
that's, like you said, that's 90% of the job. If you're having these conversations and you're consistently bringing in leads and making offers, you're going to put yourself in position to have the goal, which is what everybody wants. That's what the investors want. So once you get a good deal, then the deal is going to sell itself, but it's up to you to go find that deal. And that's where you're putting that work. That's where the hustle comes in. That's when the effort comes in. That's where the discipline, the intention, being intentional, that's where all of that stuff comes in, the consistency.
That's right.
You can do that, get those properties, then you'll be able to sell them off to anybody for a good profit.
And for what it's worth, everybody listening to this or watching this on YouTube or wherever the case may be, this allows you to have a conveyor belt type of business, right? So the conveyor belt type of business goes like this. You got incoming leads, then you send it down the assembly line, you screen the leads, you send it down the assembly line, you negotiate and make offers. You send it down. Now you get to pick an exit strategy. When you got motivated sellers, like let's say, for example, if you're buying from wholesalers and realtors, you really only have two options. You got to buy cash or get financing, right? That's really the two options you have. You're either going to buy cash, and financing can be hard money too, by the way, right? But when you're creating your own lead flow, when you do your own marketing and you talk to your sellers direct, you get to pick an exit strategy. That's where you could do wholesaling. That's where you could do creative finance. You get to pick what avenue at the end of the conveyor belt, what exit strategy is going to happen. You know what I mean? So you start off on the front and you run that same lead system all the way down the conveyor belt until you get to the end. At the end, you get to say, okay, this one is a good seller finance deal. This one is a good wholesale deal. I'm going to burr this one. I'm going to buy and hold this one. I'm going to, whatever you decide to do. And this works all the way up the chain ladder. It works with multi-units. It works with apartments. It's the same approach, but it all starts with lead generation, right? So you got to be a good, especially as an investor. We're not investors first. We're marketers. Then we're problem solvers. Then we're investors. So Tom, man, how can our listeners get in contact with you again, bro?
Yeah, you guys can check me out on Instagram. I'm always posting some value there. I'm posting tips. I'm posting live videos of me talking to sellers on the phone, posting different strategies just for everybody, all levels, posting our office, showing you guys the insides, behind the scenes, what we do. You can check me out on Instagram. at Ty the Investor, TYTHEINVESTOR on Instagram.
Throw some fire in the comments from my man Ty. Are you reading any particular books right now?
At the moment, no, I need to start back reading, man. That's one of my goals. That's one of my accountability goals I have to start doing. In my community, we got people that's posting books that they're reading, and it kind of sparked me to get back to reading because that was one of the things that got me going when I first started as well. I was reading pretty often and consistently, and but I do recommend one book for anybody who that really helped me out a lot. That's talking to homeowners and sellers, with your negotiations and things like that. It's Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Yep.
Very good negotiation book. Has sales tactics in there. It's not a boring book. It's about, he tells stories about these different hostage situations, but there's a lot of value in there with these different strategies and techniques to help talk to people. And I use those techniques and strategies even when I'm not doing my work. I'm doing it when I'm talking to my girlfriend or anybody out in the streets.
Don't say that out loud, man. but check it out. So, Never Split the Difference. Great book. I definitely agree with that. I'm not a big reader myself. I like to listen. So I'm going to drop a link for Audible in the description box for you guys as well, where you can get Never Split the Difference for free if you sign up through my audio link, my Audible link. But if you had to provide our listeners with some last words, what would those words be, bro?
We're getting into the new year. If you're not happy with your current situation, it's up to you to make the change. Change always starts within first. Look yourself in the mirror. Be honest with yourself. Find a lane. It doesn't necessarily have to be wholesaling. It could be any lane. Real estate offers so many different avenues and ventures that you can take a part in to create your own businesses that give you your own time and quote unquote freedom, etc. It's up to you whether or not you want to make the decision to make that change. And it all starts internally. You can do this business, you can do this job, you can do anything you want to do as long as you don't quit like we spoke about. Stay focused, be intentional, and be consistent. And I mean, from there, it's all up. You know what I mean?
That's right. Ty Franklin, Ty the Investor. Definitely check him out on Instagram. Check him out on YouTube. Check the links in the description box. Get started today. This is, look, here's a guy who started literally 2 years ago. His life is completely changed right now. Real estate did it because he put in the work, because he's thinking long term, because he knows he can do it, and he has the longevity in the business. And if you have that same attitude, that same approach to the business, there's no reason why you can't do it too. You just got to be willing to work at it. So look, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Be sure to like it. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell, leave a comment in the comment section, and share this podcast with as many people as possible who might be wanting to get started in the real estate business. Whether it be wholesaling or any other venture, it doesn't necessarily matter. You got to pick your own lane, like Ty said, and you just got to get started. I hope to see you guys on the next one. Peace.